In this video, we're going to cover exponential function word problems, where you're going to require logs to solve for an x value. So we didn't cover this in part A of the booklet because we hadn't seen how to use logs to solve exponential equations yet. So now that we know how to use logs to solve case 3 exponential equations, we can solve word problems. So there's two types of problems we're going to look at: growth and decay problems and compound annual interest problems. They're very similar, but there's one distinct difference on one of the parameters, and I'll show you in the examples below. So before we do any examples, let's remember what the rule of an exponential function looks like. So in standard form, we had y equals ac to the power of x plus k. In this case, when we're going to use word problems, we are actually going to set it up using this rule. We can convert to standard form, meaning that we can take the b value and apply it to the parameter c after we've found the b value. But when you're going to set up the exponential equation, you have to use this for word problems. The k is always 0, so essentially this is the rule you have in a word problem, where the b can be applied to the c parameter if you want to. But essentially that's the same rule. B means something specific here, so that's why I am including it in the setup. So the initial value for the word problem will always be your parameter a. I don't know if you remember, but the initial value for an exponential is a plus k. Since k is 0, it's just a. So the initial value is a. If the question says that you start with $1,000, that's the initial value, so your a would be 1,000. C is the multiplication factor. It's how much the growth or the decay is increasing or decreasing by, meaning like by how much percentage or by what factor. So if something is doubling or tripling, then the factor would be 2 or 3. If it's a percentage, then you have to convert it to a decimal, and depending on if it's growth or decay, add it to 100% or subtract it from 100%. We'll go over that in examples below. And B is the number of times that the growth or the decay or the multiplication occurs per unit of time x. So it's really important that at the beginning of these problems you define the unit of time, whether it's years or months or days or weeks, because it will affect your rule and the value of b and how you solve the rest of the problem. So as always in word problems, you should always set up your x and y by defining them first. So in the first example, let's work on it together. There is currently a population of 130 people. So there is currently a population of 130 means right now or initially. So that will be our A. If their population doubles every 2 years, so doubles every 2 years, doubles is one thing, and every 2 years is a separate idea. So something that is doubling, that would mean our parameter c is 2. It multiplies by 2. Our a is 130. And then our b value relates to every 2 years. Now, before I can state what the b is, I first have to see what the unit of time x is, because b is how much it occurs per unit of time x. So if f of x represents the population, so they tell you f of x, or y, is the population, and your x value says time in years. So your time is in years. So if something happens every 2 years, how many times does that happen per year? It's once out of every 2 years, right? So it could be 0.5 or 1/2. Your b value is once every 2 years. It's not 2. Some people would put 2. The only time it would be 2 is if it happens, for example, every 6 months. If something happens every 6 months, that's twice or 2 times per unit of time of a year, right? That happens twice per year, so that would be a value of 2. This happens less than once a year. It happens once out of every 2 years, so your b value is 1/2. So the rule, when it says set up your rule in part 1, is pretty much already done. So number 1, f of x is equal to, a is 130, that's how much the village starts with. The c value is 2 because it doubles, and it happens every 2 years, so that's 1/2 for the b value, and then you put x for number of years. Number 2, How many years will it take? So how many years, we're looking for an X value, will it take before the population reaches 10,000 people? So 10,000 people is the population, so we're going to make the Y value, or f of X, equal to 10,000. And then we're going to solve for X. So we've set up our equation. It's essentially an exponential equation. You could have had this on the quiz. So you'd first divide both sides by 130. You can reduce the fractions. If I divide both sides by 130, I get 1,000 over 13 equals, and if you have that as a decimal, that's about 76.92. But I'm going to leave it as a fraction. It just looks prettier. And it's also more exact. So we have 1,000 over 13 equals 2 to the power of a half x. Now, as you remember, if you want to take an exponent down, an x value down to solve for it, you can take the log of both sides. So log of this side, log of that side. So you get log of 1,000 over 13 equals log of 2 to the 1/2 x. Technically, now I can write the 1/2 x in the front and bring it down. I'm going to rewrite over here. So now that we have written it like this, and we want to solve for x, we have to divide both sides by log 2. So log of 1,000 over 13 divided by log 2 equals 1/2 x. You do this on your calculator, so log of 1,000 over 13 divided by log 2. We get about 6.26 equals 1/2 x. I'm going to leave it in my calculator, divide by a half, and we get x is approximately equal to 12.53. Now, if you leave everything in your calculator, you should get the same rounding as me, so 5.3. And remember that x is years. So it would take about 12 and a half years, right, 0.53, 12 and a half years to reach 10,000 people. And that's essentially it for the first question. We're going to do a second example that's very similar, but now we have a percentage. So the C value, we're going to represent it still as a decimal and a multiplication factor, but I want to make sure we understand the difference between a growth and a decay rate. So Andrew started a YouTube channel last month and currently has 88 subscribers. Currently has, that's our A value. The number of subscribers to his channel is increasing at a rate of 8.5% every week. Now set up the equation. So first, x and y. So our x variable, and it says to set it up as y, so I'll leave it as y. So our x variable would be the number of weeks, time in weeks. I'm choosing weeks simply because they seem to be using that unit as well in the question, and it's easier to find the b value that way. As for the y value, it seems to be looking at how many subscribers he has, so number of subscribers. Now, if it's increasing at a rate of 8.5% every week, and he starts with 88, which is our a value, for the C value, the 8.5%, some people may be tempted to just put 8.5 here. But an increase of 8.5% does not mean you're multiplying something by 8.5 times. 8.5% of the original number is being added to the original number, right? So if I want to add 8.5% of 88, I need to know what 8.5% of 88 is, and then add it to the original 88%. So in order to include the original, not the 88%, sorry, the 88 subscribers, in order to include the original 88 amount, you have to make it 100%, which is the original, and add 8.5%. So it's going to be 108.5%. And then you need to convert to a decimal. I do plus because it's an increase. I hope that's obvious. If it was a decrease, I'd subtract. And in this case, 108.5% means out of 100, right? Percent means %, like literally per 100. So please make sure that you're converting this to a decimal, because the percent symbol quite literally means that this is a fraction over 100. So 108.5% divided by 100, you are simply going to move the decimal twice. And please include all of the numbers here. Do not round. So 1.085. Don't write 1.09. That will change your answer by a lot. Now, since it's happening every week, that's only happening for the B value now. It's only happening once a week, once every unit of time. So our B value is just going to be once, one time per week, once. So there's no need to write it, and we can simply write X for our rule. Now, number 2 says, answer the question. How many weeks will it take before the number of subscribers reaches 5,000 people? You would divide both sides here by 88. You get 625 over 11, or as a decimal, 56.82. If you leave it all in your calculator, the numbers should still be pretty exact. Now you can take the log of both sides. You can take down the X value right away, and X will be log 625 over 11 divided by log of 1.085. So log of that divided by log of 1.085. I get 49.52. So in a year, as you know, there are 52 weeks, so it's going to be less than a year's time. You don't have to say that it's less than a year, but just to put it in perspective, 49.5 weeks is less than a year to reach the 5,000 subscribers. So that was for growth and decay. Now, the one thing for decay is if this was a decreasing rate, remember that the only difference here is that for the percentage, you still always start with 100%. And if you were to decrease, then you would subtract the percent you're decreasing by to find your C value. So we'll do some problems in class next week, but a decrease is just a subtraction from 100% and still converting it to a decimal to find C. As for compound interest, it's usually in terms of banking and when you want to have an investment. Unfortunately, this also means that there's compound interest on debt. So if you have credit card debt, this also applies, but in a decreasing fashion. So banks often use compound interest to calculate your investment value. So we're going to look at the positives and how investments can grow. So if the question talks about annual interest, so the key word here is really annual interest. If it says there's an annual interest at the bank or on any investment, you are going to use this version of the rule here. Now, the only difference with this version and the one we just saw, which was y equals ACBX, is that the C value is being broken down into a mini formula. So to find your C value in these types of problems with banking and annual interest, you actually have to find the value by doing 1 plus the interest as a decimal divided by the B value. So the same B value is here, right? So the number of times it's compounded per year. So X is going to be in years, right? So when we're talking about bank investments, we're usually talking about in terms of years. That's the X unit of time. Now, if it's compounded every month, if that annual interest is compounded every month, then it's happening 12 times per year. So your B value would be 12. If the compound is happening every 4 months, right? So every 4 months would be here. your B value would be 3 because it's happening 3 times per year, right? So after 4 months, after 8 months, after 12 months, that's 3 times per year. So in order to calculate your C value, it's going to have to do with the interest divided by the B value. So if it's happening once a month and your B value is 12, to calculate the C value, you're going to do 1 plus the 6% interest, which is converted to a decimal, right? So 6% here is converted to a decimal, divided by 12, and you actually get this decimal value now. So the C value is going to be 1.005, and it's happening every month. For 9% interest, it would be 0.09, and divided by 3 because our B value is compounded every 4 months. So let's do some examples with annual interest instead. So, example 1. Aaron is saving up for a trip. He places $3,500 into an account with an annual interest of 7% compounded every 6 months. So he places $3,500 into an account, so that's his initial amount. So the A does not change from what we had said previously. The A is $3,500 because that's the initial investment. The annual interest of 7% is the interest rate, so the I value. So 7% as a decimal is 0.07. So the I value here will be 0.07. It's compounded every 6 months, which means it happens twice a year, right? So the B value is not 6. It doesn't happen 6 times per year. It happens twice a year, every 6 months. So the B is 2. Now that we have A, I, and B, we have our rule. So let's write the rule first. Y equals 3,500. Our C value, let's find C separately. So C is equal to 1 plus the interest over B. So it's going to be 1 plus 0.07 divided by 2. So it's going to be 1.035. That's the interest that's compounded every 6 months. So after 6 months, it's like a 3.5%. And the other 6 months is another 3.5%, but it's compounded on the amount you got after 6 months. So there's an extra amount that you're getting. It's happening twice, so 2x. Now that we have our rule, we can answer the question. How much money will you have after 4 years? So now they're asking how much money will you have. So the Y value is money in this case. So X is time in years. And Y is value in dollars of investment. So now that we're looking for after 4 years, we can plug in X as 4. So Y equals 3,500, 1.035 to the power of 2 times 4, which is essentially just going to be 8. So 1.035 to the power of 8 times 3,500. His investment would be worth $4,608.83. For the second part of the question where it says, how long would it take for Aaron's account to reach $6,501.21? Now we're asking to solve for X. How long would it take is in terms of time. How much time X would it take for his account to reach Y, 6,501? So we're going to replace Y with 6,501.21 and solve for X. So first we're going to divide both sides by 3,500. And we get 1.857 approximately. And then we're going to take the log of both sides and bring down the 2x. Right, so it's going to be 2x times log. And then you can divide both sides by log of 1.035 so that you're isolating the x. So 2x is equal to log of 1.857 divided by log of 1.035. So I'm just going to do log answer divided by log of 1.035. So I'll write here, 2x is equal to 17.99, repeating for a little bit, and then divide by 2. X is 8.999, repeating. So it's about 9 years for the investment to reach $6,521. And that's basically it. So that's one example. We'll do a second one. The only difference here really is the C value, so let's try one more. If you deposit $100 in a bank account with a 12% annual interest rate, so $100 is your A, initial amount. 12% interest is going to be the I value. So I is 12%, which we'll put as a decimal after. It's compounded monthly, so once a month. How long will it take for your investment to reach $2,000? Right, so first you're going to set up your equation. And your C is 1 plus your interest over B. So your A value we know is $100. And your C value we can calculate here. 1 plus the interest is 12% as a decimal, 0.12, divided by B. Now B we didn't really discuss because X we have to determine the unit of time. Now I think that years is the easiest for most of these investment questions. So X is in years and Y is going to be your investment value in dollars. So the 0.012 will be divided by the B value, and because it's happening every month, that's happening 12 times a year. So your B is 12 because it's 12 times per year. So your C value is just going to be 0.12 divided by 12, which is 0.1 plus 1, so 1.01. And your B is 12, and then X. So your rule is 100, 1.01, 12X. Now it's asking, when will your investment reach $2,000? So $2,000 is the investment value, so you're going to replace Y with 2,000. Divide both sides. Now you take the log of both and divide both sides by log of 1.01. So I'll just do that in one step because I think we're maybe seeing the pattern by now, but maybe not. If you need to see the step in between, just take the log of both sides and proceed as we did in the last example. I just skipped showing one of those steps. Log of 200 divided by log 1.01 is approximately 532.47. And we can divide both sides by 12. So it would take 44.37 years. So if you're depositing only $100 and you just let it sit and you just wait for it to reach $2,000, it's going to take 44 years. Now, you're not adding any amount into the account. If you're adding money in your account, it obviously grows faster because the capital initially is bigger and it's increasing at the 12% rate. So these questions are essentially the two types. You have growth and decay problems, or you have annual interest problems. I have posted the homework and I've written it in the email, so please use the rest of the period